It's morning. A robin calls sweetly to the early sun. A dog strains at his leash. A jogger pads by. Couples stroll arm in arm and pause to enjoy a vista, and then seek shelter in an airy summer house. A sea breeze enervates the body and refreshes the spirit, while youngsters frolic on craggy rocks and among ancient oaks. The sparkling sea plays host to a fleet of sailboats, and a swan floats by. Of course, I'm speaking about Larchmont's Manor Park. My name is Susan Spencer Marola, and I'm president of the Larchmont Historical Society. I would like to welcome you back to the I Know a Village series. Today, our host, Mary O'Connell, will explore Manor Park with some very special guests.
Welcome to the second of Larchmont Historical Society's Centennial Series, I Know a Village. As Susan has said, today we focus on Manor Park, 12.65 acres of land along the shore of Long Island Sound in the village of Larchmont, our jewel in the crown. Few residents know the village, and in particular Manor Park, as well as our first panelist, Bruce Allen, who has lived in Larchmont on and off for 63 years. He went to St. Lawrence University for 1 year and then received a BS degree from Columbia University, after which he began a long career as a research scientist in biology at some of the most distinguished hospitals in New York City, the Rockefeller Institute, the Walker Laboratory at Sloan Kettering, and then Memorial Sloan Kettering. He and June raised their 4 children in the village and gave and give it countless volunteer hours. He was an active member of the Volunteer Fire Department for many years, treasurer of the Campfire Girls, Commodore of Horseshoe Harbor Yacht Club, and currently an active member of the Manor Area Homeowners Association, a valued parishioner of St. John's Episcopal Church, and the archivist of the Larchmont Historical Society. He has voluntarily watched over and worried about Manor Park, a park he cherishes. Bruce, why don't you tell us about the 12.65 acres?
Well, I tell you, Mary, giving the history of Manor Park in 5 minutes is the biggest challenge of my life, so I'm not going to waste any more time. When Thompson J.S. Flint bought Manor Park in 1865 from Edward Knight Collins, he had the idea of having a development there, a real estate development. And by 1872, he sold out 288 acres of the 338 acres that he bought to the Larchmont Manor Company. And when he did, he made a proviso which makes Manor Park what it is today. He set aside 6 acres originally, which was later enlarged 12.65 of land, and this gave the occupants of the houses on map 610 the deeded right to use that park, to swim there, to moor their boats, and it became part of their property. This was fine. Mr. Flint made that development for people of moderate income. It was very popular, and he knew that he had to build something down there as a community center. He built the Union Church, which now is the Horseshoe Harbor Yacht Club. And that became a weekly affair, but church is 1 day a week, and the other 6, it was used for social events. There are many, many sailors in Larchmont. It became very popular. And before long, Mr. Flint was asked if he had any objection to a yacht club being formed. This was in 1880 that Larchmont Yacht Club became organized, and it stayed 2 years at present Horseshoe Harbor location. It outgrew itself very soon, moved to 2 other places before it came to its present resting place. And by 1890, Horseshoe Harbor still had a lot of sailors there. They were weekend sailors, and they organized the Horseshoe Harbor Club. The Yacht Club, the designation Yacht Club, didn't come till the 1930s. At any rate, this grew, became very popular. They had many aquatic sports, and I'd like to say something about the beach before it was developed and the park. It was rugged. There were rocks there. There was no sandy beach, as a matter of fact. We have pictures in 1873. It's just fascinating. There was a little shack down the western end of Horseshoe Harbor. That's the first bathhouse. And by the time, by 1880, and this had been enlarged, and as you know, I would like to go over the history of that. I can't. But on the eastern end, there was the umbrella. The umbrella preceded, was there at the time of Edward Knights Collins. He had that. That is probably the oldest landmark in Manor Park, and we hope it stays there for a long time. Manor Park grew, and during the Depression, it still grew. And by 1940s, the beach, which now had become developed, they brought in sand. All the sand that's on Manor Beach was brought in the early times by a sand barge. And it was dumped, and horses drew a plow and straightened it out. That's where our beach came from. In the 1930s, Manor Park had an angel. They loved these angels, and I wish we could find another one. But Charles Brady King, who was quite a character, he bought what used to be Amy Giroux's carriage house, which the Kerrs live in now. He developed that. He made a beautiful home out of it. He imported carillons from Italy, and he made a beautiful place. But at any rate, he also took a big interest in Manor Park. It was his next door neighbor. King is responsible for putting the walkways in Manor Park, paving them. He's responsible for putting in the modern gazebos, the seats, the stone seats, for putting up retaining walls. It would have eroded a lot more if these things hadn't been done.
Well, Bruce, can we bring
Surely.
it up to date?
Well,
after King,
after King, the beach is much too small for the number of people that wanted to swim there. There was quite a bit of difficulty with the village. The population grew. And to make a long story short, and it is a long story and a fascinating one, Manor Park has retained its ecological purity. It's a gorgeous strip that's going to take a lot of tender, loving care, both now and for the years to come. And I hope that we have sense enough to do just that. Thank you.
well, since you mentioned Umbrella Point, our next panelist, I can introduce by saying I think the only day in 25 years that Marge Picone found herself with nothing to do for 20 minutes must have been the day that she was asked by Mayor Miriam Kernan to co-chair with Nan Forger the Larchmont Centennial celebration this year. Over that 25-year period, she and Dante and their 8 children filled several houses in the village, most notably the Manor House. A former member of the New Rochelle Hospital League for Service, the Westchester Lighthouse for the Blind, a village trustee for 4 years, and currently an active member of the Beautification Committee, she is manager of the Henri Breton French Antiques in Greenwich. I should ask her to speak about time management, but instead, Marge, why don't you begin by talking about the poster in back of this?
Oh, thanks, Mary. That's very nice. Let me say that this was one of the most wonderful things that I took part in, and I enjoyed every minute of it. It started when I was a trustee, I think about 1979, and a gentleman who is a mainstay of the village, Jack Swiper, approached me on the street one day, and he was rather incensed about some of the trash and litter that was around. And he really took me aback, and I quickly scurried and got great support from the Department of Public Works. They went and cleaned up the spot. And in thinking about that, I approached the board and at one of the board meetings and suggested that we should have a committee or a commission dealing with the upkeep and the beautification of the village. We didn't have any money. Our village being what it is and our tight budget, even then, we had to be careful. I suggested a poster or some kind of a competition to raise funds, and the board agreed, and we started. I have to give a great deal of credit to Phyllis Schoenberger, Sue Gawler, and Al Scully, because they guided me through this whole thing, and we decided that we would have a competition based on I Know a Village, which is a poem by Phyllis McGinley, a former resident. I contacted the McGinley family, and they were very generous and said that we could use it without any cost or anything like that. So that was very nice. We sent it out to all the artists and asked them to do a poster and had the competition. We had the villagers vote. It was shown in 2 different areas in the village. And they voted, and there you see the result, which was done by Molly Burns, and it was she was way ahead of everybody. And then Al Scully very kindly did the real grunt work as far as having a very fine reproduction done.
But that's the umbrella point Bruce referred to.
That's right, and that's why I think everyone liked it so much. So then we started selling them, and that is where we got the seed money for the beautification committee. I kind of chaired it for that first year while I was still a trustee, and then Dorothy Hegney and, oh, she'll kill me. Dee Dee Guckett, I'm sorry. Dee Dee Guckett co-chaired, and we really got off to a great start and have basically the same committee that we had then, which is 10 to 12 women. And it basically is self-sustaining. The village matches some of our funds, but we've done a great many things since, giving the awards to a village or some aspect of the community on either side of the village every month, and they receive a poster and a ribbon. And we've since had the gazebo constructed in Constitution Park. We started out with putting the different benches all around town and the planters, so I think that has added a great deal. And they are just a wonderful, hard-working organization. They work with everybody and do everything they can.
Is this poster still available? Is it?
Yes, it is. We do have some available, and there are T-shirts available, and they're usually sold on the umbrella days. Then also Village Hall, I believe, has some of the posters still.
So some of our viewers can still obtain them if they would like them.
Right. We sold quite a few at Earth Day last year up at the reservoir, and they're very popular. Every college kid who ever lived in Larchmont has one in his dorm room, or he should.
Well, Marge, since you lived in the manor house, is there a passageway down to the Sound, or not?
That was the biggest story of when we moved there.
Did you lose any children down there?
No, but we had a lot of fun with it, and our girls were just in their early teens at the time, so besides our 4 boys, there were lots of other young fellows around all the time, and that was the thing to do, was to go down the basement and see if they could find the hole. There had been an excavation, which I think some of the Conley boys had started in one spot, and but it led to naught. But one day, 2 of our children came tearing up from the basement, and their eyes were big as saucers, and they had their hands behind their backs, and they said, guess what, and I said, what? And they said, look what we found, and they pulled out these 2 bone segments, and they were quite large, and the kids were petrified. They didn't know what they had found. They thought they were
a skeleton.
Skulls or part of a skeleton, because there was also a cell down there, and where evidently at one time there was slave trading, and someone who lived there used to bring people in and keep them in the bottom of the basement. We think it was parts of a cow, but it was great for show and tell. They took it to show and tell, and that lasted for
Made up a
a
marvelous
year or
story.
so. Right, it really was great fun. And it was a wonderful, wonderful house to live in. It just, it was so warm, and I think of the first time I met Mad Conley after she moved away from the manor house, and I said, would you like to come back for a visit?
Yes.
And she said, no, she said, I can't, I'm not ready yet. And she said, how do you like it? And I said, I love it. I said, every morning when I walk down the steps, I just have such a warm, comfortable feeling. And she said, that house wraps its arms around you. And it's very true.
It has some of those beautiful stained glass panels in the
Yes.
front door.
Yes, they were done in France, I believe in the late, or the mid to late 1800s, and brought over for the house. And the wallpaper that had been on it was murals, and that was the paper from about the late 1800s.
Yes. Yes.
But segments were missing, and that eventually went the way of
Yes,
the flesh.
yes,
Which is
yes.
too bad.
Well, thank you very much, Marge. We're going to be right back. Joseph Vandernoot, a resident of the village for 47 years, has probably contributed 47,000 volunteer hours to the town of Mamaroneck and the village of Larchmont, give or take 100. He and Alice raised their 7 children in Larchmont and are now keeping a benign eye on 22 grandchildren who live here or nearby. A retired investment banker with R.W. Pressbridge, a firm also retired, Joe was a member of the volunteer fire department for 10 years and town supervisor from 1976 to 79. He is presently a board member of the Larchmont Aid Society, the Westchester Association for Retarded Citizens, and the Youth Shelter in Mount Vernon. St. Augustine's Church has benefited greatly from his advice and volunteer work for the 47 years he's been a parishioner. A member of the Larchmont Manor Park Society since 1960, he has served as president of the society since 1987. Joe, I don't know if one of your Dutch forebears set foot on Manhattan Island with Peter Minuit, but it was a fortunate day for the village when you set foot on our shores. Would you talk about the Manor Park Society?
I certainly would be very happy to, and I also would like to mention that we also have a great-grandchild.
Oh,
But getting back to Bruce's beginning of Manor Park, I have a map here in 1873, and there are many things that are very interesting, but one of the most interesting is the fact that the present site of Fountain Square was known as Flint Park when this map was drawn, and that it's bounded by Park Place, which of course is now Maple Avenue, and Maple Avenue on this map is up here where Grove Avenue is. But Bruce talked about the park, and I'd like to talk about the fact that the park was there and the fact that someone had to look after it led to the formation of the Larchmont Manor Park Society. The Park Society was conceived in 1891 and actually created in 92, and the Manor Company deeded the park to the Larchmont Manor Park Society for the munificent sum of $1. And it is, and always has been, the duty of the trustees of the Larchmont Manor Park Society to see that the park is properly maintained. And another very interesting name, along with Thompson Flint, who thank God had the foresight to set this property apart, is Charles Murray, who was instrumental in bringing the first water to Larchmont, the first electricity, and was also the first president of the Larchmont Manor Park Society. In maintaining the park, we have, in recent years, gotten a lot of assistance from the Historical Society, mainly through Bruce's efforts, and those gazebos he talked about that were erected in 1933 were recently refurbished through a fundraising effort of Bruce's and put them back in shape. And also, that Umbrella Point that we're all so proud of has been devastated several times, and just recently through the efforts of or through the fact that Bruce wrote an article in the paper, a local lady by the name of Leah Vaccaro came by and offered to pay for its repairs, so that we have very many friends, we hope, and we hope to make very many more.
Joe, I think you have a tin cup out right here.
Well, it's,
And you-
well, the tin cup is going to get much bigger because the tin cup is not going to hold what we're going to need in the years to come. We are celebrating our centennial, 100 years of existence next year, and one of the main features is going to be a ball, and we're going to hold the ball in Fountain Square under a tent. And we all ask you to pray for good weather, and I think it's the 25th of July in 1992. But also a function of that ball will be the things that go along with the ball, which will be a massive fundraising effort, not only from our local people who we are doing so very frequently, but the many people who grew up here, lived here for many years, and still love the park. And we recently have had some success in getting contributions from this type of person, and we certainly hope that when this 100th anniversary comes around that we can increase that considerably.
Would you describe who can use the park and the beach?
Well,
Because you enlarged
one of the biggest, well, let me talk about the beach if I may.
Yeah.
We had our major or largest use of the beach some years ago when we accommodated 785 families. And at that time, in order to do that, we had permitted 3 families to use a house, along with the single family and the 2 in a house, and the, well, when you just come down and hang up your individual clothes and you don't have any, you can't leave them there, you've got to take them home with you. From that peak, we came down drastically for 2 reasons. One was the opening of the Hummock's pool, and the second was the fact that we weren't very good business people as trustees of the park, and we went for many years without changing the admission prices. And this one year, we realized that we had to make a sort of a drastic increase. And I have a few letters at home that should have been written on asbestos paper at that time, and it did bring down the attendance, and it kept coming down to the point where we got down around 400. Another contributing factor a couple of years ago was the fact that, as you all know, the pollution and the sound got to be rather serious, and an awful lot of people would not use Long Island Sound. Of course, many of our old large families with 14 and 11, and a small family like 7, the children were growing up. And I see a trend currently when I see all of these strollers being pushed around, and I think that we've turned the corner. And I think we're going to see some larger families and hopefully a greater usage of the beach by not only 610ers but village people.
But you opened it up to the 10538.
I was just about to say, in order to be able to keep going, 3 years ago we opened it up to the Larchmont postal zone, and we have had an excellent response from the postal zone, and our attendance has turned around. We are now increasing. We went way up last year, and this year we're up even further, and the beach hasn't opened yet, but we certainly hope that we can keep a viable entity going down there, and that in the years to come, more of our local people will be using the
Well, it's a great responsibility to be responsible for that park and facility.
Well, it certainly is, and of course I'm fortunate to have many trustees who are vitally interested. We're fortunate to have a fellow like Bruce, who is our guardian angel, and certainly not only does things by word, but also by deed. And it's very interesting that our newest trustee and our youngest trustee is the grandson of the man who built the first bathhouse, Billy Morley's grandfather. Built that bathhouse, and Billy is in charge of our centennial celebration, and I think that a lot of his friends are going to be impoverished between now and 1992 because Billy really is going home.
Well, mark the date and pray for sun. Our next panelist is Ralph Santaliquido, who's a familiar figure in the village since 1956. Ralph is a retired detective of the Larchmont Village Police Department. Some years ago, Ralph, when I first knew Ralph, he volunteered to coach the St. Augustine's football team called What Else the Saints. Many of those grown-up kids remember him well and seek him out at Manor Beach whenever they can. I don't know who the first youngster in Larchmont was who discovered that a Christian brother, a Latin scholar no doubt, at La Salle Military Academy, dubbed him Ralph Holywater when he was a student there, but that nickname stuck. The Larchmont Manor Park Society is fortunate to have him as manager of the park and the beach and in charge of security. So you have a lot of responsibilities, Ralph, so tell us about what you do.
Control the security of the park, see that it's properly maintained, and then handle the registration in the beach,
Well, the registration means signing up for the bathhouses and the swimming permits
the
and...
mailings and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And then hiring of all the guards, checking their qualification.
And how many guards do you have?
We list about 18 now, but we don't utilize them all because several of the guards have athletic programs or go into summer school or leave early for college, so we have to have backups to take over when they leave.
And they get their, what, Red Cross training, or do they
have,
come with it?
Well, in the beginning it was simple lifeguard training. Now it's up to lifeguarding, and they have to take an in-depth course. It's not as simple as it used to be. And they have to have CPR, first aid. All the certificates must be updated. They must be available to the Board of Health. They must be ready for inspection.
They also have to learn French. We have so many French families, and the little children down there speak French in piping high voices. They're charming.
Oh, they have a good time.
Yes, yeah.
They understand get out of the water.
They do, in English.
Yeah.
So you have the guards, and then you have a concession, don't you?
Yes, years ago, when I first started, the only part of the concession was an ice cream and soda. And gradually I've kind of coerced the trustees to work along with me, and we've got candy in there, and then we've gotten chips. And now we've gone to hot dogs, hamburgers.
Well, a lot of the mothers must be happy about that, because then the kids don't come home for lunch.
Well, we're trying to get this to a 7-day operation, and in doing so, we've remodeled the entire area to conform with Board of Health regulations, and going to sanitation school and various other schools that would make it easier for us to maintain the facility as a food service.
Where do you go to sanitation school?
I went to the community college at Westchester
Ah,
over the
ah.
winter.
Yeah. Did your wife like that when you
No.
came home with a lot of new ideas?
You want to keep the house clean up every Tuesday, so
Right.
another job.
I can imagine.
I don't think Ralph remembers when the only source of food down there was the good humor that came
Yes.
through the hole in the
No,
fence.
we had a hole in the fence, and we built a stair that came up to the wall. And he was the only man allowed to park in a no parking zone there. And although you weren't allowed to eat on Manor Beach, you weren't allowed to have food or anything, he was allowed to rip the paper off, serve the thing through the gate, then got it by the stick and walked out onto the patio where they ate the ice cream. There was a lifeguard that kept him from eating on the sand.
Well, who was the vice president of Good Humor who had arranged that? He had a monopoly for a long time. Your activities during the season are what? You have the general supervision, but do you have anything? I mean, you have the clam bake at the end of the season, but do you have anything during the summer?
Well, what we do is we set programs up. Bonnie Perciasepi is my waterfront director, and Tracy Moran's the head of the lifeguard.
What does a
And
waterfront director do?
The waterfront director has to be qualified to instruct, teach, upgrade, and give swimming lessons, handle programs and stuff along that line that are related to beach management. And she delegates authority, and we have a pretty good system whereby we maintain educational programs for the lifeguards, which we have to go through on a weekly basis. And we also have programs which we provide for the children. And we have, on certain days, we may have races or something.
I think we ought to mention that when Joe talked about the pollution of the Sound, I think about 3 or 4 years ago, many of us who swam in the Sound all of our lives were a little leery of it, but last year was very clean, wasn't it?
Yeah, we weren't closed once last year as a result of Board of Health, but I did close it 3 times because of the
Algae?
turning of the tide, the
Yeah.
red tide, brown
Yeah.
tide. And when we do that, we set the sprinkler system up on the beach, and the children have a great time out
And the
there.
grown-ups too?
Grown-ups go in there, yeah, sure. They go in there and tell them they're going to get their kids out.
Did you want to say something, Bruce?
Well, Ralph tells you about these main things, but having worked with him for several years, he doesn't tell how many bumped heads he patches up, how many noses he blows, how many distraught mothers looking for their kids. He's going 24 hours a day, I think. He's been down there at 3 o'clock in the morning to check up on the guards. And I would say offhand that we'd have one heck of a job finding somebody like Ralph to manage that park.
How many guards do you have?
I won't tell you.
Okay, all right. That's classified.
Another thing I would like to say is, you know, you talked about people who love the park. Carl Olson, who used to live here for a number of years,
Oh,
and
yes.
was an amateur artist. I saw Carl and his wife Jean, and there he was taking pictures one summer day, and we invited them up to the house, told him I was trying to raise money for the park. He sent us 2 of the most beautiful paintings to sell for what we could. This is an example. I also got a letter yesterday from a girl who, 3 pages long, single-spaced, about her love for Manor Park. I hope that's published. But I think you've got to hear these things and see them to realize what a dent that place makes.
Did you and June do a little courting in Manor Park?
Yes, we did.
I saw an early picture of you two in Manor Park.
Not after 10.
No comment.
I thought you had. Ralph, do you want to say something more about what you're responsible for? I didn't know whether you had covered all that you wanted to.
Well,
Uh,
seeing that everything is placed in order for the opening of the current beach season, as it is every year. And then I also have to see that it's secured at the end of the season. And I keep up on regulations that may change. We had to do a book on the how we handle the park for the Board of Health, for their inspection. We have to keep a log. And all these procedures are updated, upgraded, and they're prepared so that there's a smooth flow from season to season without any rough roads. A job that used to be a seasonal job is no
Has
longer
grown,
a seasonal
yeah.
job.
What would you tell our viewers who have small children? How can they help you keep their children in line?
Oh. Try to stay out of the park at 10 o'clock. Don't take any crayons or markers in the park with you. Just remember, when you walk in a park, it's clean, it's beautiful. If you take something in the park and drop it there, it's ugly for the next person that comes in. So, I mean, it's the reason why we don't have garbage bans. We don't have anything in that park other than it's passive. You come there to see its beauty, you come there to enjoy it, and then leave it that way for the next person that comes in there.
How many people use the park in the year? Would you have any ideas through the strollers and the swimmers and the...
Much too many. I have no idea what the number is. But I have an interesting little anecdote, I think, talking about strict regulations. The first day I went to that beach, I had my three little girls. The little boy was home. He was only a couple of months old. And I was thrown off the beach. I didn't have a top. I think that regulation went out the following year, 1943.
The beach itself is strict to a degree. I've eased up a lot of things. Certain days we can eat. We have certain, like Manor Beach Day or July 4th or any one of the holidays. I say, okay, we break the rules. It's okay, eat on the beach, play games, enjoy yourself, run around, have a great time. It kind of takes that edge off, well, we can't do this, we can't do that, we can't do that.
Mm-hmm.
And the final beach day, which is the
clam
well,
bake?
actually, it's not a beach day, it's the clam bake.
Yeah.
When everybody comes down here, it was such a success last year that we ran out of everything. We just didn't have anything. Lucky I had
No
kept,
good humor man was nearby.
well, no, he was gone. I had kept a few steaks from a previous outing and a few things that I hadn't let loose right now, but just in case. And sure enough, it broke. Everything was gone, so we started cooking steak. And the people who had nothing to eat all of a sudden got steak.
So the last
last
shall be first.
and the last, so it turned out
They
fine.
lucked in to that. Is
It's
there
more of a
anything you'd like to
family.
add, Bruce?
There's nothing like putting in a plug. I've just written a pamphlet on the history of Manor Park, which is available at the archives. I couldn't say a tenth of the history. Anybody that lives in Larchmont ought to catch up on it. So,
Well, I think what would be wonderful is that if a lot of our viewers would visit the archives and see what your collection is, because
Yep.
it's a fine collection. And why don't you tell us where the archives are located?
well, we're in the town center, which used to be the old central school next to the high school up in the hill. We're on the 3rd floor at room 304. We're there Monday, Tuesday, and Friday from 1 till 3. And we do open on special occasions. I have a lot of children. I have one now that evidently Murray Avenue is doing the Palmer family. And little voices say, would you send me a resume of the Palmer family? I'm supposed to do their homework for them. I won't do that, but other than...
You're smarter than that.
yeah.
Well, thank you very much for taking part in this discussion this afternoon. It's been wonderful. And I'm sorry that we can't go on at greater length, but I thank you all. Joe Vandernew, Ralph Santaliquido, and Bruce Allen.
My understanding of this test is that it's a much better test than what the third grade reading test was.
Oh, I would agree, yes.
And
It's much more comprehensive.
Much more reflective of what really good teaching practice
Absolutely.
and curriculum should be during school year.
Yes.
Do you find, I mean, since we did redo the English language arts program a couple years ago, do you find that this is a good assessment tool to kind of see what?
Absolutely.
Joan, do you feel this is reflective of what you're being offered in your
Yes,
class?
and I think over the years we've developed a writing curriculum to challenge the children more. So.
Well, I guess.
And I think that goes hand in hand with what it shows. And we just recently gave the math test, and I think our experience giving the ELA in January, the math test is very similarly written, and the type of answers that they're looking for. So that really helped the children. So yes, it is a good, and that's what we're moving more
Cynthia, in
towards.
terms of the reading part of this?
In terms of the reading, well, I integrate the reading with the writing. So there are really two different scores where you can see gap between the reading score where they were required to read passages and answer multiple choice questions. There's one reading score, and then there's a composite score, and that's the score for the test. But that composite score includes the reading, writing, listening parts of the exam. And I think it's really great that they've accomplished all those areas because all those areas do involve reading and reading and writing are very much tied together. So
What I appreciate about this is that it's a wake-up call now as fourth graders that as we begin through the process. We haven't had this in the past, we've waited and waited, and it's now a benchmark for us to use as we move through the system. So we can see, as students enter our 5th grade, what we need to do. We use it as a diagnostic tool, and efforts to change in our 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade as we move forward, we will see what we can offer. In fact, I know that Ms. Santangelo has already put into place for next year a number of programs that will be reflective of just before these results, but also with these results for that particular student class as they come through. But as curriculum needs to constantly change to adapt to the students that are coming through the system, each individual grade has particular strengths and weaknesses
Sure,
that we have to look at and adapt.
The one thing that I guess also is that when it used to be with the state test, it seemed that come the springtime, a lot of teachers would have to start teaching, quote unquote, teaching to the test.
Right.
And it seems with these new tests, it really should be more reflective of the way the teaching should be going on on a day-to-day basis. And I think that's a very positive thing, you know.
I have to say though, Ginny, I think our kids are tested out. We've
Yes,
talked about that
yes,
a lot.
I know.
And we talked about the amount of instructional time lost.
Well, the
Mr.
fourth
Woods
grade
and I were talking
especially,
about it. The
because
4th grade has been.
we took the ELA in January, we took the SBET 2 weeks ago, and then we just took the math test. So,
And Ed, I know with our 8th grade, 11 out of 16 days in June, we've been doing nothing but testing. And you know, I almost think that we've gotten to a point, I know it's overwhelming, I've been in the classes after the students have taken the test, we're at a point where we're testing more than we're teaching. We're using the entire month of June to test. You know, is that a valid reflection of what's happening? And if we are going to be successful, we need instructional time. We need time with our students. So whether that means an extended day or an extended year, obviously the commissioner, the Board of Regents, all of us are going to have to look at that. This district provides that in our program with our learning camp for students that need the remedial help. And I have to tell you, right now our census is low. We need to have people, parents, willing to commit to that. Marlene just sent me yet another letter to send out to parents saying, please take advantage of this. We provide scholarships where necessary. If that's an impediment to some people not attending, it is an important decision that people have to make. I understand it may affect summer vacations, but I believe that after the first 20 days of the summer, there's still time for the family to get together and have a summer vacation. It is imperative that parents and students participate in that on some level. So those are some of the cases that we have in place. Yes.
I'd like to just add that we are also doing telephone outreach, and the staff is provide a great deal of support. In doing that, it's very time consuming, and we're going to do another round of follow-up telephone calls after this next letter goes out. Because we really want the message to get those down.
Very important. Thank you. And thank you for your work.
If we have no other questions here for Mrs. Roy, we will go on to some unfinished business. And basically under the unfinished business, the only thing I wanted to bring up at this time were to officially report the results of our district vote. On the budget vote, Proposition 1, the budget was approved by a vote of 501 to 286. A very good turnout, positive for our budget. And we thank Mrs. Kendall and Dr. Mustick for putting together a budget that could be working so well for the entire district. Also on the vote of that date, there were 2 trustees up for election on that time. Trustee Jeffrey Grant was re-elected, and Ms. Linda Kiarsis was elected to serve a 3-year term on the Board of Education beginning July 1 of 1999. We thank you and congratulate both of you, and enjoy your next term. Linda, congratulations. We go on to new business, and we have in our agenda a resolution on the check signatory. You've all had an opportunity to review this. Are there any questions for Kim or Peter on this?
I have a question. And as our fiscal year comes to a close, I guess we'll be auditing it by our auditors. Is this an accepted practice that they would look upon?
Yeah, I have to explain that the reason that we're doing this is to generate the checks in the computer. And generating the checks by computer can only use one signature. And what we've used in the past has been a check facsimile machine, an actual check signing machine. So when the software company wanted us, in order to change, we have to go to 1 or 2 signatures, except one who can read it. And we actually had him review the resolution, and we asked him who should be the signature. So they've actually reviewed this resolution and presented it to us.
That's from our lawyer. Yes.
Yeah.
And you still have the option, you still consistently review the payroll accounts and the voucher schedules monthly, so that doesn't change.
This is just to eliminate
Right.
the physical signing of the checks by the treasurer.
Right.
It just saves us money.
We've moved from an outside agency, doing our payroll staff, Prince brought that in-house as opposed to email, so it's done right now.
Can we lose anything of this form of checks and balances?
Not at all, not at all.
Because they wouldn't have a physical signature.
There were no physical
It was always done.
check signing.
Any other questions? Resolved that the Board of Education of the Rhinebeck Union Free School District changed the check signature policy from 3 signatures to 1 signature. Signature to be identified at the reorganization meeting on June 23rd of 1999. May I have a motion? Mr. Talibi, a second. Mr. Grant, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So carried. We are at the point in our agenda where we have the public has an opportunity to again comment or discuss anything they've heard this evening or speak up if they'd like to say something. Did anybody want to speak up on anything at this time? Anybody want to give more money at this time? Did you want to say anything? No? Okay, then we go on to dates of note. We have on Monday, which is June 14th, Flag Day Assembly at the Daniel Warren campus. The kindergartens will celebrate at 9:15 and the first graders at 10:15. 2 weeks from tonight, on June 23rd, is our next Board of Education meeting. It will be held at 6 p.m. here in the high school library community room. It will be immediately followed by the annual reorganization meeting. June 24th, the Thursday of that week, is the last day of classes and the day of graduation. The elementary school kindergarten will be dismissed at 11:30, first graders at 11:45, and the Bellows campus 2 to 4 will be dismissed at noon. Graduation ceremonies will take place at 9:30 a.m. for the middle school, which will happen in the auditorium.
Yes.
And 1 p.m. in the afternoon for the elementary school, the 4th graders, and that will be
High school, middle school.
in our Performing Arts Center. That's for the 4th graders. And the high school graduation will take place outside of E Corridor
Yes,
at
on the
6:30.
outside on the lawn.
Outside on the lawn, weather permitting, 6:30 p.m. that evening, Thursday, June 24th. Is there any other dates of note that we'd like to add? Mr. Woods?
I just wanted to mention, on the 23rd, the day before graduation, 2 things at the middle school. At 2 o'clock, we have our award ceremony in the auditorium, Performing Arts Center, I should say. And then at 7:30 that night is the 8th grade graduation. That's over on the 23rd.
Very good.
And maybe we should for the television, the high school exam schedule.
It's beginning on June 16th and ending on June 24th.
And graduation rehearsal.
Following graduation rehearsal is on the June 24th, following the last exam, beginning approximately 11:30.
Okay. Any other dates of note that the administrator would like to throw in? If not, we have any information that we need to? If not, we'll go to adjournment. Can I have a motion to adjourn? Mr. Kelly, a second. Mrs. Galata, all in favor?
Aye.
So carried. Thank you very much for coming this evening. We are going over to the administration building for planning session and executive session. Thank you for coming. And thank you for those generous gifts.